sciogliere questa grande e bella assemblea, desidero annunciare che il prossimo incontro mondiale dei giovani avrà luogo a Toronto, in Canada.
August 20th, 2000. At the conclusion of World Youth Day 2000 in Rome, Pope John Paul II officially announced that World Youth Day would be coming to Toronto in 2002. What would it mean for the Church in Canada to host this great gathering of youth? How would they and the media respond to the Holy Father's visit in a time of crisis for the Church in North America? And would young people attend? Young people who are not known for their pious devotions, and the devotion to the cross is not the most appealing one. In 1983, Pope John Paul II entrusted this 3.8-meter cross to the youth of the world. Since then, it has become a symbol of World Youth Days, an Olympic torch traveling throughout the host country for 1 year before the event. It has traveled far beyond Rome, attending World Youth Day in Argentina and Spain. Pilgrims set their prayers at its base in Poland and Denver. It became the beacon for 5 million pilgrims in Manila. There, Pope John Paul II proclaimed that the pilgrim cross passes from one continent to another, and young people everywhere come together to witness that Jesus Christ is the same for each one, and that his message is always the same. In him, there are no divisions, no ethnic rivalry, no social discrimination. The cross's travels also included France, and in a side trip outside of a World Youth Day host country, it visited Prague, Czechoslovakia, in 1985. Communist rulers, known for repressive actions against the Church, denied the Holy Father entry into their country, but they allowed a visit of the cross. When the cross returned to North America in 2002, it was taken to Ground Zero in New York City. There, a service with the cross brought hope to the crews still sifting through the rubble. Perhaps millions of people have now touched this cross and prayed with it for freedom and peace. Two of those hands belong to Jerry Gajontka, a computer engineering and technology student from St. Catharines, Ontario. He joined the Portageurs, a group of youth who braved an arduous journey.
It was actually during my studies that I found out about this in my exam week of 3 years of my studies in the computer field. I heard about this pilgrimage in a cathedral, a pilgrimage that would carry the World Youth Day cross, and the cross would be carried from Montreal to Toronto on foot. And when I heard this by the men speaking, right away I turned to the person beside me. I said, I have to go on this pilgrimage. It's a big challenge to walk 540 kilometers on feet. And that's what initially struck me, something radical, something different. I know I would enjoy the physical challenge of it, and I knew there'd be a spiritual side to this which wouldn't hurt having in my life. But when I started walking with this cross, when I met the people that were walking with me, the 19 Portageurs, and all the thousands of people that we met along the way, and see how it touched their life, being around this simple wooden cross, that's when I realized and revalued all my priorities in life.
Around all these people I had never met before, that after 2 days of being with them, I felt like I'd known them more than I know some people I met when I was 2 or 3 years old, you know. And there was something in that cross that just called to people. And when I saw it and I touched it, I just had this feeling. It was the first time in my life I'd ever received any kind of calling to anything, and I just knew that I had to follow this cross wherever and however I could.
No, if it was only a publicity campaign, I'm not sure I would have done it.
Sébastien Lacroix from Sherbrooke, Quebec, was both a pilgrim and the organizer of the cross's itinerary.
I was in charge of the cross, the World Youth Day cross, taking care, making sure it was welcome everywhere, in every diocese, making sure we were using it in the best of it, because it's the symbol of our faith. people need to attach their faith to a symbol. And that cross, because it was given by the Pope to the young people of the world, for them it was like a relic. People touching it and crying.
Why?
And asking for healing. Because they love Jesus and they know what Jesus did for us. And they're sure that that's where he gave his love for us.
Sebastien did not know when he volunteered that this experience would include meeting the Pope twice.
The second time was more, very much more personal. And I looked at him and he touched me in a way like my agent of the cross. And it was a very privileged moment.
God, I think, brought me, he took me by the hand to show me the mystery of his cross. This was really a profound gift and a surprise to me. I think I'll remember this walk for my whole lifetime. It was every day doing something that is basically the same, walking, going in a church, meeting people. But every day it grew deeper and deeper and deeper into the heart. This miracle of the cross, wherever it goes, everyone gathers. Everyone forgets about their differences or whatever might keep them apart. They go together, all Christians, and they touch the cross and they pray on the cross, and they really put out their hearts on the cross and leave there what suffering might be, and you see their faces change. And every time you see it, it's like, well, this is not just an accident. If it happens everywhere, for everyone, there has to be something about the mystery of Jesus Christ that has died and is risen, that is transmitted through this symbol that we're carrying. So it really grew deep into my heart.
The Pope's health had been the restless subplot in the months before World Youth Day. But he made it, and his Alitalia plane was finally coming to a halt on the runway of Lester B. Pearson Airport. Though early media reports speculated the Prime Minister would not attend the welcoming, sure enough, Jean Chrétien was present along with his wife Aline and Ontario's Premier Ernie Eves. Father Thomas Rosica, CEO of World Youth Day 2002, explained that these were not just politicians trying to capture the spotlight, but collaborators in what was about to transpire in Toronto.
The key to the success of the event was the bridges we had to build. Such an event comes and really invades a country. When you stop and think what a World Youth Day is, it's the leader of another country who comes and says, I want everybody to come and see me in somebody else's country. It's a bit off-putting at first. And the only way that it can work is with a very solid infrastructure and governmental collaboration. We were privileged and blessed. And I also know from the point of view of the government speaks now as this being the first major project they have ever done together. Federal, provincial, municipal, regional, all the levels working together. And as we stood there with all the government colleagues, or the partners as we call them, on the Saturday morning, as we were all standing together at Morrow Park, waiting for the Holy Father's helicopter to land. And then the protocol visits were going to start with the heads of state and heads of province. We stood there and we had our arms around each other without even stopping to think, with the Prime Minister and the Premier and the Governor General and all of their staffs. And this was an extraordinary thing.
It wasn't just government officials waiting anxiously at the hangar. Father Rosica's team comprised of an unprecedented number of young adults, most of who had never organized anything of this proportion.
The risk with the World Youth Day was that a number of adults would get together who would be experts, and they would put on an event for young people. And it's always a risk because there's a lot of goodwill and a great desire to do things. There's also a presumption that young people don't know what they're doing. I've never bought into that before I was a priest and in the early years of the priesthood and whatever. Because the only way that we can make a difference, and especially in the church, and work with young people, is by doing things with them and for them, together. And I believed from the beginning that if this event was going to be a success in Canada, It had to be an event where the young people were at the heart of the organization, to take ownership of it, to appropriate it, to lead it, and to guide it. And I was criticized heavily for this by the church, by people in the church, and by people watching from the outside saying, these kids will let you down. They won't deliver. They won't be punctual. They won't take this seriously. And I smiled each time I heard that, and I said, watch. Because out of the national staff alone, and then I can speak about the diocese, but in the national staff, we were about 380 people. And one day last June, we counted. Klaus Bartels, my chief of staff, and I sat down and counted. And there were about 225 in the 20-something group. This particular group never once let us down. The commitment, the generosity, the devotion, the faith, the love, the energy. And see, the World Youth Day was the pretext. What these young people did was learn how to become leaders in the church and leaders in society and how to transform culture.
Everyone, from Father Rosica to the government officials and the novice youth leaders, arranged the finest details of this arrival. But at times, their relentless planning was forced to yield to unpredictable forces, like the Pope himself. Though a hydraulic lift was waiting for him, John Paul II had different plans. This 82-year-old pontiff inaugurated World Youth Day by once again defying expectations, demonstrating peerless charisma, and living up to Vatican spokesman Dr. Joaquin Navarro Valls' description of him, a body pulled by a soul. The Globe and Mail's Michael Valpy wrote, "No doubt the journalists had frail Pope already written in their notebooks. John Paul II did it his way." Another national journalist, Marcus Guy, commented, "Instead of surrendering to his illness, he has turned it to his advantage, becoming a living example of everything he preaches. Be not afraid," he exhorted the faithful at the start of his papacy 24 years ago. Minutes later, Prime Minister Jean Chrétien commented on John Paul II.
We have, in the presence of Your Holiness, a truly inspiring example of personal commitment. The theme for World Youth Day 2002 is, "You are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world." Your own life bears witness to the wisdom and the truth of these words.
There would be more surprises to come for those who greeted the Pope at the airport, as he continued to improvise what was to be a carefully scripted event. None were more shocked than 10-year-old Georgia Giddings.
Father Tom Rosica came up and said, "This row, stand up." And of course I'm thinking, oh no, they're gonna kick us out because there's lots of people there. But we started walking up and like, before you knew it, you were there.
But Father Rosica wasn't sending them out. He was hurriedly fulfilling the Pope's spur-of-the-moment request to personally meet some of the youth from the crowds.
I didn't say anything, actually. I was so stunned. It was breathtaking. He took me by the head and he said, "I loved you," and he kissed me, and I ran crying. It's hard to explain, but all I can say, it was emotional. I was happy. I was in peace.
The audience at the airport was small compared to the 375,000 pilgrims waiting to see the Pope at Exhibition Place. All were eager to show off how far they traveled to be here, or how proud they were that their country could be host to such a gathering. But how do you explain their eagerness to catch a glimpse of him in person? Pilgrims were perched atop each other's shoulders, pressed against the barricades so many rows deep that any height advantage was made insignificant. Cruising into Exhibition Place in his Popemobile, Pope John Paul II seemed an unlikely rock star, one who was making Jesus Christ the biggest news story in the world, one insistent on meeting the youth of the world, not just communally, but in personal encounters with palpable love.
When I got in front of him, he didn't say anything, you know, but he just looked at both of us, and we could just tell just the way that he looked at us in his eyes that he loved us and that he was praying for us right at that moment. I know if if I had anything that was going on in my life, I knew that he cared, you know, and he didn't know who I was or he didn't know where I came from, but you could tell just by his eyes that he cared about us.
Tell me a little bit about the Pope himself, because as we watched him, he certainly seemed energized by the response he often got from the young people. I know that you've known him for a long time and you've watched him decline, if you like. Tell me how you would gauge his energy and his response in all of this.
People asked me last week, what medication is he taking, or what's his best medication? And I said, well, in Canada there were two things. There was a thing called Strawberry Island, and the second thing was called Young People. Somehow he comes alive. The World Youth Days were not invented by Pope John Paul II. They were invented by Father Karol Wojtyła, as a young priest, because he was wise enough to always make a place for young people in his life. And I think a lot of us who have difficulties in our lives, it's because we haven't made a very important place for them in our lives. And when they're at the heart of our lives, no matter how old and how infirm, we'll be young. And he managed to come here at a time that was very critical, an old, infirm, and sick man, and he made us feel young again.
Canadian commentator Rex Murphy had his own theories. After watching the events in Exhibition Place, he wrote in the Saturday Globe and Mail, "If there is such a thing as charisma, as we have learned to use that term in our age, then Pope John Paul II must have been baptized in it. Those who criticize John Paul II or his tenure as Pope for turning the papacy into something of a celebrity machine have it all wrong, upside down. The rock stars and prefabricated celebrities of the big screen or the small box are a mere parody of real charisma. They rent charisma. The appeal of Pope John Paul II to young people in particular proceeds from substance. Conviction is an attractive quality in itself, but conviction allied to service is irresistible."
Dear young friends, you have come to Toronto from every continent to celebrate the World Youth Day. My joyful and heartfelt greetings go to you. I have been eagerly looking forward to this meeting. The Church today looks to you with confidence and expects you to be the people of the Beatitudes. Blessed are you if, like Jesus, you are poor in spirit, good and merciful, if you really seek what is just and right, if you are pure of heart, peacemakers, lovers of the poor and their servants. Blessed are you. What call will those on early morning watch choose to follow? To believe in Jesus is to accept what he says, even when it runs contrary to what others are saying. It means rejecting the lure of sin, however attractive it may be, in order to set out on the difficult path of the gospel virtues. Young people listening to me, answer the Lord with strong and generous hearts.
Following the address at Exhibition Place, the Pope departed for Strawberry Island to rest for 2 days until Saturday night's vigil. But even on his retreat, youth from around the world were invited to join him. Though the Pope was now many kilometers away, the international media spotlight had not diverted its gaze from Toronto. World Youth Day's more subtle storylines were already developing, like just what the pilgrims were up to on their downtime. Joe Mihevik coordinated city services for World Youth Day.
The Eaton Center, the CN Tower, and our regular tourist attractions. But that's not really the significant sites. The significant sites were the homes, the living rooms, the kitchens, the parishes, where there were real good conversations that happened between youth from Argentina and folks from Toronto. At subway stops where young people would talk with older people. It was that kind of regeneration, that feeling in a big city that we could talk to one another. World Youth Day comes along, and all of a sudden you have these young people singing on the streets, singing on the streetcars and buses, being in our coffee shops, talking with one another with the high energy that youth have, and it just transformed our city.
If this event was a World Youth Day of streetcar singing, spontaneous sidewalk conversations, and intergenerational and multicultural barriers breaking down, then it is appropriate that one of the week's most powerful moments would transpire on an avenue. For St. Paul, the cross is what allows him to both transcend the attachments of the world and yet offer himself fully to the world's redemption. For Father Robert Gendreau, the director of the Way of the Cross, this juxtaposition of the urban and sublime was his very intention. Father Gendreau was once a professional actor and coordinates Good Friday productions of the Stations of the Cross for his Montreal diocese. He is now one of the organizers of the 2008 Eucharistic Congress in Quebec City.
When I had that job, my first reaction was to preserve the Way of the Cross with its sacred content, not to add anything, to make it, the traditional Way of the Cross. But then, to locate it in our world, I wanted Jesus to visit our world. So I wanted traditional costumes in modern setup.
Father Gendreau's unorthodox casting techniques added challenges to the production.
They had no training. They were real youth of Toronto, coming from different nationality background, but no one was a professional actor. I think 2 or 3 of them were studying in theater. I had 60 persons who came. Out of them, 56 made it. So I took everybody who were sent to me by the Lord. And I think to welcome these people, to discover who they are, and to say, he can do this, she can do that, she cannot do this, and he cannot do that, and to play with this. Sometimes you make a few mistakes, but then you repair. And they were open, they were committed, coming for the training, the rehearsal, and the work was inside them. And I was taking what they were offering fully. And then we build up this tapestry or mosaic or this piece of work that was a build-up of commitments.
Despite the crowds building and the pressure Father Robert and his group of novices must have felt, all was calm behind the scenes.
I was 100% peaceful. That never happens in theater. My actors, an hour before finishing the rehearsing near the Parliament building, had to come back to Nathan Film Square to get the makeup and the costumes. On the way back, they met a group of sisters singing and dancing. They started to sing and dance with them, and all of a sudden the sisters said, "Oh, are you coming? Are you staying for the Way of the Cross tonight?" And Jesus said, "Listen, we are doing it, so we better go." And for 20 minutes, they enjoy the spirit of World Youth Day, you see.
Well, it's both my passions, my love for Christ and I guess the world of theater, which they both collided, but it was by far the easiest thing. It was just being there truthful, and it wasn't acting. Nobody believed it at first because they knew I was always driving up to Toronto and then back every night, and everybody thought I was crazy. My friends were saying, "What are you doing there? What is this, rehearsal? What's Way of the Cross? When are we?" I said, "Just wait, you'll see, you'll see." I'd have to say the experience in general has changed my life. From the moment I decided to participate to the moment where I actually got cast as the role of Veronica, I started thinking differently, obviously, because I was researching for the role, so I was preparing for what I thought it was going to be, which ended up being so much more. It was like a dream, really. At that moment, when I looked out, and the only time I got to look straight out was when I held the veil out, because other times I was focusing on Jesus. But when I held the veil out and saw people hanging from the buildings, and people in the trees, and all of their faces, and everybody there with us praying together, it was out of this world. The energy coming towards us, the goosebumps, nothing like it.
9 months later, when the World Youth Day Cross was being passed to the German delegation, April had this veil blessed by the Holy Father.
Her name is April, and she played the part of Veronica in the Via Crucis.
Veronica.
And she wants you, could you bless this? This is the holy cloth.
She received the portrait.
That she received the portrait.
This is all the cast members in the Way of the Cross has this cross. With the Way of the Cross.
For both April and Father Gendreau, presenting the Way of the Cross on University Avenue provided hope for the whole country.
I made the comparison as if it was like a rainbow, and it just brought forth all the colors we had contained, everybody had contained in themselves. And by having the Stations of the Cross and the Downs View, the Papal Mass, everybody being together, all together, it washed the streets with so many colors. The city literally went from black and white to a rainbow and a slew of colors.
Oh, what a sign of hope. What a sign of transformation. God is working, and we are trying to respond to His grace. Our church, as you said it many times, needed that. Now we have to what it did on me, it filled me renewed my hope in a state I would never think, I could dream of. Now I can dream that so many things may happen and will happen.
Hello, I'm Peter Mansbridge. University Avenue is a major street that runs through the heart of downtown Toronto. But in July of 2002, it was transformed. As part of World Youth Day, thousands of people lined the street for the Way of the Cross. It was a procession up University Avenue, pausing at 14 stations to recreate the steps of Jesus on his way to Calvary, the site of his crucifixion. It's a ritual that may go back as far as the 11th century. But the text for this Way of the Cross was written by John Paul II, and he watched it on television as it was broadcast live across Canada.
Ecce homo.
Voici l'homme.
Behold the man.
Mais la réponse est
The cross is the sign of a love without limits.
La croix est un signe d'un amour sans limite.
Lord Jesus Christ, in the moment of your agony, you were not indifferent to humanity's fate. O Christ lifted high, O loved crucified, fill our hearts with your love, that we may see in your cross the sign of our redemption.
Saturday morning, July 27th. The wiser pilgrims woke up early and were on their way. With hundreds of thousands of people expected to arrive at Downsview Park, a late departure could mean a poor vantage point for the big event. So, with roads closed, youth walked as far as 8 kilometers to their destination. The heat made it feel like a lot further. For some pilgrims, dehydration and blisters delayed their arrival. But for the most part, the convergence at Downsview was incident-free.
It was beautiful. Seas of people full of anticipation. We actually had a reporter from the Toronto Star who went along with our group. And I thought, this is a reporter who's going to get the real story. Because there were some journalists who were complaining that there wasn't any dialogue happening. For one, we had sessions of catechesis where we could ask cardinals anything we wanted to. But more importantly for me was the dialogue between the different pilgrims. On the way to Downsview, we were talking about our faith. We were talking about the big questions. And a lot of questions that I had about the church were resolved through this.
Appropriate to the theme from Matthew chapter 5, "You are the light of the world, you are the salt of the earth." The field was lit with the candles of hundreds of thousands of pilgrims. As individuals with a solitary flame, perhaps these youth once felt isolated in their faith. But united, the church glowed intensely. During the vigil, which was a celebration of evening prayer, Sister Marie-Pierre sang the Canticle of Jesus from Philippians chapter 2.
I took it as a job, really. It's strange, but it's one more thing that I might be able to do to make it all work out. But as I was practicing it and as I was trying to make it the more beautiful as possible, I realized what these words really meant. And I felt very little, singing this in front of everyone. And I've really prayed that these words, Jesus chose not to seek equality with God, but really went down in humility, took on our condition. I really prayed that this might be transmitted through me. It's not a Céline Dion singing for the Pope.
We have just prayed reminds me of an important part of the Aboriginal tradition that we call canoes from hollowed out trees. It is necessary to choose this particular tree well, since its ability to carry us to many shores is a matter of life and death. Just as the canoe leads us safely to distant shores, so too is the example of Jesus in responding to the adversity that he experienced. I was placed in foster homes until I was 5. Although I was too young to pray for myself, others' prayers were obviously answered when I was adopted by a caring, strong, and loving family. Through this family's faith and love, I experienced the love of the Lord. It has taken me a long time, but I want to say that given the way my life began, I am grateful to my birth mother for giving me life, and to my family.
Emily's poignant testimony was followed by challenging words from the Holy Father.
The question that arises is dramatic. On what foundation must we build the new historical era that is emerging from the great transformations of the 20th century?
John Paul II ended the evening with this question to ponder and a prophetic word to contemplate, as he said goodnight to Downsview. The future is in your hearts and in your hands. God is entrusting to you the task, at once difficult and uplifting, of working with Him in the building of the civilization of love. No alarm clocks were required on Sunday morning, as cold rain woke up the pilgrims at dawn.
Well, it certainly wasn't cushy. Our group had this very narrow strip that we found that seemed like a really good find, but only because it was still damp from rain the week before. But that was nothing compared to at 6 a.m. the next morning, when big wake-up call for thousands of people as the rain started pouring down. You can imagine the lineups for food and for the washroom. It took half an hour just to get back to your group. But you know what? No one was shoving, no one was complaining. People were sharing ponchos and umbrellas.
The weather did not keep the papal helicopter away, nor could it dampen the pilgrims' enthusiasm.
So many in our world drifting to sleep.
As soon as the Holy Father began to speak, blue sky peeked through, making way for what ended up being a beautiful, hot summer day.
Let sisters take their hands to heal and be their friends. Together let us stand against the
If you love Jesus, love the church, do not be discouraged by the sins and failings of some of her members, the harm done by some priests and religious to the young and vulnerable fills us all with a deep sense of sadness and shame. But think of the vast majority of dedicated and generous priests and religious whose only wish is to serve and do good. There are many priests, seminarians and consecrated persons here today. Be close to them and support them. You are young and the Pope is old.
Seen with our own eyes, the one that we have touched and felt with our own hands, the one that we have heard with our own ears, the one that in the depths of our hearts we have met. He is the one who we proclaim to you.
82 years or 83 years of life is not the same as 22 or 23. But the Pope still fully identifies with your hopes and aspirations. Jeunesse de l'esprit, jeunesse de l'esprit. Although I have lived through much darkness under harsh totalitarian regimes, I have seen enough evidence to be unshakably convinced that no difficulty, no fear is so great that it can completely suffocate the hope that springs eternal in the hearts of the young. We are not the sum of our weaknesses and failures. We are the sum of the Father's love for us and our real capacity to become the image of His Son.
We all know that a lot of people went to World Youth Day to see the Pope, but in the end, they met Jesus at the papal Mass. I think that was the whole point of World Youth Day. And the revitalization of youth ministries across Canada proved that it worked.
My God, my salvation, love lifted high to set me free, my Lord, my God, my salvation, oh, love lifted on the cross for me.
So how would you describe the past week?
I thought of it last night, the few hours of sleep I got, and all I can think of, the one image that came to mind is that Toronto was a huge canvas for an artist. And God was the artist. He took a big brush, he sprayed it with goodness.
You know, when you look back on events like this, and you've attended other World Youth Days as well, tell me what you take away with it yourself.
The church needed this event, and the world needed it, and Toronto needed it for many reasons. This is not just a series of photo opportunities or a rally to muster the troops, but it's the deepest expression of our Catholic faith. How do you describe over 800,000 people standing in the pouring rain with winds that were enough to take you flying higher than a helicopter? How do you describe the scenes and the lines and the patience of people waiting in long lines for subways and food? And how do you describe all this? This is something extraordinary that's happening. This is about faith. It was a pilgrimage. It wasn't a rock concert. It wasn't a happening. It was a deeply moving pilgrimage. And even the most skeptical and the most negative and the most critical could not help but be moved.
Palm Sunday the following year. It was now Germany's turn to receive the World Youth Day spirit.